This video is intended to illustrate the steps that I did in order to replace the paddle cable assembly on the Toyota inductive charger. I followed the steps outlined on the EV Nut page by Daryl Dickey. Thanks for that, Daryl. And but I decided I'd videotape each of the steps to provide a little bit more detail. I realize that this is probably a little bit late to the game. There's only a few of these RAV4 EVs still on the road, but hopefully this will help somebody who is having a problem with their paddle. These wind up getting twisted a lot, and there's some small wires in it that wind up getting broken. But mine were actually, I have 153,000 miles on my RAV4 EV, and this was really kind of the first failure, which wasn't even actually with the car. It was with this paddle assembly to be replaced. So here's the step. First I'm going to take out the old paddle, and it's a T20 6-point bit. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, but it's like a Torx bit. It's called a Torx screw. It's T20. And you stick it with an extension into these. Before I open it up, I'm going to take an opportunity to get rid of all of the cobwebs and dust. Step 3, we're going to remove all of these screws. For whatever reason, this one has a standoff, so I just made a little note there to remind me that it has a standoff there. Before, I'm going to remove this connector that goes to the paddle receiver assembly over here. So one note, Daryl's step-by-step makes note of this connector, and he says it actually goes to the LED display. What this is actually to the paddle assembly, the paddle receiver. There is another connector, so there's actually two connectors in here, and this is the one that goes to the LED display, and that one also needs to be removed before you can slide the charger out of the cover. I had that trouble, and then I noticed that it was binding up right here. So now I'm going to remove these screws from the cover back to the Torx T20 screw. There's two on this side, and then there'll be two on the other. Flipping the charger over to the back, there's also 4 10mm bolts here that need to be removed. Now once that's removed, this whole thing should be able to slide upward. You want to make sure that this little connector doesn't get caught in the little window. Lower it on its back, and these are those two connectors that go up to that one box off of the side of the charger. In Daryl's tutorial on EV Nut, he indicates that there's some like little plastic keepers for this plastic shroud. Mine didn't have those, and in fact on the other side there's actually a couple of screws that need to be removed in order for the plastic shroud to come all the way off. I don't know if I'm missing some screws there or not, but I didn't see a plastic keeper. It's actually a screw on the other side. After taking off the protective shroud, the first thing I noticed is this very large capacitor here. And from my knowledge of electronics, these large capacitors can hold a charge even though the power has been removed from the charger. So usually there's a self-discharge circuit inside there that will automatically discharge the capacitor, but for safety I usually like to short these out just to make sure, and then obviously have it not been on for a while. According to Daryl's tutorial, this sister board needs to be removed. There's 3 screws here at the bottom, and you can see it's actually connected to this board on the top, on this connector. In his tutorial, he doesn't mention anything about removing these connectors, all of these connectors on the top, so I'm going to go ahead and leave those on and just kind of let them dangle because I think I can just pull out and get to the RF connector that's behind here, which is the reason that this has to be removed. Just gently wiggling it until it releases that connector. Let me take a peek under, and there's the RF connector that needs to be removed. Next, Daryl mentions the leftmost connector with the red, green, yellow, blue. It's this one right here that needs to be removed, so I'll go ahead and remove that. And it's zip tied right on the top here. I may have to remove that zip tie. So the next step, it says to remove the RF connector that's under here. So I'm going to gently lift this board up and remove this RF connector here. And he said that you might want to use needle nose pliers. Just wiggle it off. It's very slowly coming off, wiggling it off. And there it's off. Where the old paddle cable comes into the unit, there's 4 screws that hold it here, and it actually comes through in this dark corner back over here, and these are the power cables that go down to the main circuit board, and then it also goes has this connector and then the RF cable that goes down. Those are all of the cables. But I'm just looking at like feeding these wires through. The power cables need to go it's like a choke. I can't remember what they're actually called. But, you know, in Daryl's view on his photos, it was a lot lighter in here. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can take this shroud off so I can get a little bit more light in there, because I'm just imagining trying to feed those wires through here could be a little tricky. Little wire tie that's holding, you know, the wire that needs to come out, plus some other wires. And this actually goes through the circuit board, and you can usually squeeze these in and push them through. And I may have to still cut it, but I'd rather not if I don't have to. Because I don't actually have this type. Actually stick a small screwdriver inside these little wire ties and get them to release. And this one is just so small, I'm not able to do it. So I think I will have to actually cut this. Alright, now that it's off. Down below here, this little RF cable is going through this little wire clamp. So I'll thread that out, and it's also going through this one right here. So now I think those are all loose. So now I just have to remove these on the top. Alright, now I'm going to remove these 4 screws on the bottom. Be able to feed it all out, just making sure the wires don't get snagged here. It helps if I'm just doing one at a time, and then I alternate back and forth. Alright, so that's the old harness out. So here's the old one, and I need to get this plate off so that I can put it on the new one, and it's just got a ring nut here that I have to loosen, and let me get a tool for that. So I'm finding that this is pretty corroded on, so I actually put it in the vise and clamp down the vise on the fixed nut on the other side, and then I'm actually going to use some solvent spray. I wouldn't do this on a new one because the solvent may actually affect the insulation. Alright, now I'll thread this plate back on to the new one. Up to here. And then the nut. I'm going to have to thread the wires back through here. The power wires are going to go up through the choke and come to the top circuit board, and then the RF wire and the little red, green, yellow, and blue wire are going to come back over to this location to plug in here. So I just need to wire those, thread those through so they all go their correct directions. So I've been having some trouble getting both of these to go through that choke because there's a weird angle to get up to the choke, and then it has a tight turn into the choke. So I'm going to try a different method here. I'm going to actually tape these together, offset a little bit, so that they're not both going through with the connectors at the same time. And I'll tape this up. Electrical tape. And then I'm going to actually tie a piece of string on the front connector so that I can run the string through and I can have the ability to pull a little bit while I'm pushing. So even getting the string through there's just not a lot of places to put your finger in there, was proving difficult. So now I'm going to run a wire back this direction. I can get it to bend down so it can make out this hole over here. And then I'll attach the string to the wire. So I used a pair of forceps to get the wire on this side. And now I'll tape the wire to the string. So this is proving to be the most difficult part about the whole thing, is just feeding the wires back through the bottom because of this tight angle in here. Alright, now the string's through. Now if I pull the string, and then both wires are through now. Alright, I'll leave a gap here because I got to get these wires in now. These wires should be fairly easy because it's a straight shot for them. Wires are through, so I'm going to put this base plate back on before it gets away. So by the way, one thing I forgot to check was the polarity of this. I don't know that it matters, but I wanted to make sure that the white went back on the white. So I had the benefit of looking back at the video to do it. But you may want to look at it. I'm going to run the RF cable back through these little areas, these little wire clamps. There's one there, two there. And then I'll plug it back in down here. Okay. Bring this up. and then attach this one on the top of the sister board. Now I can plug the sister board in. So I'm just aligning those connectors there. Now it's just a matter of me reassembling everything. I don't like to use power drivers when I'm dealing with a circuit board because it's easy to get them too tight, so you got to be really careful with it. So I'm just going to end up using a regular wire tie here. Reach in, get those connectors. Just one. And two. Reconnect these connectors for the paddle here and the LED display. And that's it. New paddles installed. I hope it works. Okay, here's my moment of truth. I plugged in the charger. The normal, kind of self-test lights came on. That seemed fine. Pull out the paddle. That looks normal. And come over and plug in the car. Okay, did start. Charger starting. So far so good, it's staying on. Seems like we might be okay. Normally by now it would have aired out. So it's been going for about 3 minutes now, 17 amps, so it looks like it's working. So that was the complete repair of changing the paddle and cable assembly on the towel charger, Small Paddle Inductive Charger. So thanks for watching.